Okay, there we
Esoteric
go.
fire, here we go.
All right.
All right. This is
So how was
exciting.
everyone's Thanksgiving?
Mine was good. Cooking all day. Kids actually helped me, so I was happy. Had my pies, and I had, well, what did I have? I didn't make turkey. I made lamb because we're not big turkey eaters unless it's a turkey sandwich. So I made lamb. I made Brussels sprouts with a lot of good stuff. I made string beans. I made, well, this is my favorite thing to make with lamb. So I take the lamb broth that's cooked from the lamb and I cook it with rosemary and garlic, and then I add that to rice, and it's like, oh, I only eat it twice a year. So it's so delicious, and I really
That sounds
enjoyed that.
fantastic.
Yeah, I had
Well,
salad.
yeah,
I
that's
had like,
but that's you're only supposed to do like special things on Thanksgiving. I mean, it's like that's when
Yeah.
you rip out the things that you normally wouldn't eat.
yeah,
In fact, you made mention of like the only eating lamb. Yeah, I'm not a I don't think anyone's really a turkey fan, really. I
Nope.
mean, it's a
not in my
it's
house,
an
really.
yeah, no, like I we kind of just we just did a Whole Foods catering.
That's
It was-
great.
it's so much easier. It's like $80. They get you like a 10-pound turkey. They give you.
So you're advertising for Whole Foods now?
Yeah, I'm advertising for Whole Foods, and if they want to come and give me
He
some
didn't
money,
even pay you.
yeah, well, you know what? I don't. This you do a couple freebies, and then they, when their sales increase because it's inevitably because of us, then they'll come and ask for some offers. But no,
Absolutely.
it's really good because turkey is the hardest meat to make.
It is.
It's so
The
easy to
best-
make it dry.
Yeah, I think the best way to make turkey is you have to put it in a clean garbage bag, a brand new garbage bag, one that doesn't have scents and stuff like that. And then you put in like white wine and lots of lemon, some rosemary, herbs. You let it sit like that for 2 days.
Bag
Yeah, because
a plastic or a paper garbage bag.
No, a plastic one. Otherwise, all the liquid will spill through. A plastic one. You get a turkey, put it inside a plastic bag, add wine and white wine and lemons and some herbs. Let it sit like that for like about 48 hours and then cook it. And it should taste nice and tender. But
Yeah.
the problem with that is, who the hell has a big enough fridge to stuff that turkey?
That's exactly the other part of it too.
That sounds like one of those freezer, one of those basement freezer fridges are like 50-pound capacity, for hunters and whatnot. So then at that point, you have to go and get yourself one of those deep freezer fridges that.
That's actually something every
unless
Midwestern family has that one.
Well, I'll tell you something, unless you're Albanian, because I'll tell you something, most Albanian families, they all have at least 2 fridges, one in the garage and one in the house.
Oh yeah, no, I grew up with 2 fridges, one in the basement, one in the garage, or the basement, and that was always the deep freeze, fridge that we had you're just talking about there, and but yeah, for us, we're in New York. We don't know.
Yeah, there's not enough room here in this part of town.
There's not enough room in this part of town. And I think, and the other thing too, it's just popping it's like you just said, 48-hour prep, and then it's usually about a 6-hour total cook. We go from nothing, and you got to baste it, you got to keep it going. Whereas with the Whole Foods, you just stick it in there.
Yeah, they got those big ovens. They could like throw freaking how many turkeys in there and cook it at one shot.
And it's all cooked, but it's all pre-cooked. So all you do is warm it up. It's like an hour, hour and a half. That's it. It's good. We carved it up. We allowed ourselves to have some stuffing.
That's awesome.
And just it was fine. It was it's not a big deal, except it's Saturday now, so we're having to eat fish instead of the turkey sitting around. So that's but we still have some food left over.
I made an 18th century pumpkin pie, which is not sweet. It was with a keto blend. So I took a full pumpkin, cut it in half, threw it into the oven at 350 for 40 minutes until like the skin was easy enough to peel. Left it in the fridge overnight. Became like a puree overnight because it was like, the skin is super easy to peel off. Yummy. And then you just scoop that up. I didn't even put any sweetener into it because the pumpkin itself is sweet. And since I'm on, a ketogenic diet, my taste of sweetness has completely changed. So regular sugar actually, it burns, it legitimately burns. So what I put was just regular puree, some butter, a whole bunch of spices, nutmeg, cinnamon, allspice, cloves, ginger. Mix
Yeah,
that
all
in,
that good
add
stuff.
some eggs and some heavy cream. Pop that in for an hour with a ketogenic almond flour based crust. Boom,
Yum.
done. Savory.
And it's a
Love it.
savory pie, so that's not sweet. So you're gonna want to get some like a whipping cream with it too, if you want to get something sweet with it. But it's nice. It's a different way of doing things.
Speaking of sugar, I will say this about sugar. It's interesting. Sugar is a funny thing. So I love to eat sweets like on a weekend, right? But I don't like to eat sweets if it's too freaking sweet. Why? Because the sugar, and it's interesting because I was diagnosed years ago, many moons ago, with Sjogren's syndrome. I don't have like an issue anymore.
What is
So
that?
it's like it's an autoimmune disorder. It's basically your
Oh.
cells are like committing suicide,
Oh,
fighting each other, killing each other. It's like a step below lupus. So what happened to me years ago was I would get really bad muscle and joint and bone pain. And
Yeah.
and my skin, believe it or not, would feel like it was burning, like a sunburn. Have you ever had a good sunburn? I used to have that feeling. So last time I ever experienced that was like back in 2014. And I realized that one of the culprits was my husband decided to buy me sweets a few times a week for like a few weeks. And I was having it because I was like, oh my God, this is good. This is good. But it was like, from a local bakery, not the healthiest bakery. And all of a sudden I got so sick for like almost 2 weeks that my skin felt like it was burning. And I was like literally in bed for about 2 weeks.
Oh my
And
God.
yeah, and the doctors were like, oh, you need to go on this medication, that medication. I'm like, what? Hell no. I said, I'm not going to do that. And then I discovered immediately after that, because I was like, God, you got to help me out here. It's like, I got to figure something out. What do I do? How do I clean up, heal? And then I started learning about Bragg's apple cider vinegar. I started learning that sugar, I have to stay away from sugars. I started learning I got to eat less gluten. I got to eat more meat, fish, and greens. And so I changed my diet. And when I changed my diet, guess what? None of that stuff happened anymore. I used to have a pain in my knee, like this arthritis pain in my knee. That went away. I haven't had issues since then. My allergies went away, which is cool, except it did come back this year, which was very odd, but that was just for like a couple of weeks. And then all that changed. But I noticed that when I eat sugar or something, like if I literally was to put a little sugar in my mouth, I will end up getting a throat infection. It will burn the shit out of my throat and I'll get like a throat infection.
Yeah,
so like
that was happening to me today. Because so when I purge sugar, what happens is I get my throat, at the base of like at the base of my my collarbone, it feels like it's on fire.
Yeah.
And nothing can go. There's like no remedy, no cure. The
There
only
is a
thing they
remedy. I'll tell you what I do when I have that, because I'll experience like, when I'm out somewhere and you go to a party and event. So I don't want to say, no, I won't have the dessert. I'll have a couple of bites, and then I'm like, holy shit, what did I do to myself? When I get home, I take like 3 drops of North American urban spice, wild oil of oregano. I take 3 drops of that and a little bit of water. I don't recommend it having in water because, it is very spicy and I don't mind the spice, but other people might like choke. So you could have it in like some juice. And that issue like gets nipped in the bud, doesn't even develop. So
Okay, I think I need to go and buy that tomorrow.
yeah, they have it at Whole Foods and Vitamin Shop. Speaking of Whole Foods.
It's since we're on that topic of it, because I mean we're, there's always a spiritual relationship between between the foods that you eat.
Yes.
And it's just all I know is I was a lot more wild in my emotions in terms of the ups and downs when I had sugar as a natural part of my diet, and especially if I had a few drinks. It's like it's Lord knows what could really happen with it, especially if I'm out with that boss or something. And ever since I cut that out, and whenever you drink altogether, you're really inviting spirits to come in. Right?
Yeah, that's why they call it spirits. That's why they call
exactly why they call it spirits.
Yep.
Yes, exactly, 100%, because that's what occurs. Now, since I cut out sugar, alcohol just doesn't do that to me anymore at all. Like it is I'll have it at the end of the night, usually just to kind of calm myself down, get myself ready to sleep, because that's just what I use it for. It's to calm my spirit, just to be done with, because I'm usually high strung actually throughout the day.
At work, yeah.
And so, but ever since I cut out sugar, it's I just don't have those wild mood swings, and I don't have the like almost possessions, considering I spent time with my boss, who is also a witch, so not exactly a shock spending time with her, and then all of a sudden I'm laughing in the weirdest way, and people looking at me going, yo, what's going on here? So it is interesting, because there's a big question about why they've been pumping so much sugar, into especially the American diet in particular.
Well, one, it's the crack cocaine of America. We have the
Yeah.
biggest,
100%.
I mean, look at the kids today. I mean, the most obese children. If you look at children today and you compare them to children 100 years ago, I mean, today we have like children that are like obese. They're like seriously
Mhm.
overweight. I remember taking my
Mhm.
children to visit the pediatrician, several years ago. And he said to my husband and myself, he goes, I really wish, he goes, your children are so healthy, they're really fit. He goes, I really wish that most of my patients were like this, And we were like, yeah, we noticed, there's a big obesity issue. But, the other thing too, and I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but I nursed all three of my children for like a total of 6 years together. So, and it's funny, and this is funny actually, now that I'm thinking about it, my two oldest children, actually I think even my third one too, they were like vegetarians. They did not like to eat meat, believe it or not. My
Wow.
third, yeah, my oldest one really didn't start having meat on his own until he was like about two and a half. And
Sure.
then my second one was 1.5, because I was getting them to eat some meat at the same time. And then first time my third one had a burger, she was 4 years old. She didn't want to eat burgers. She was like, that's disgusting. I don't want to have that. So we used to like always give her like, some chicken here and there. We would sneak
Right.
it, to trick the kids. But, there is something interesting too with sugar. I remember my oldest one was very hyper and high strung, and like I would give him, pause, because as a mother, you're like, you just want your child to eat no matter what, especially if they're picky. And his thing was he loved to eat pasta and loved to eat salad, so I was like, why is this kid so hyped up? I didn't realize that the sugar and the sugars in the pasta was making this kid so damn hyper.
So
Plus, I'm
what's
sure
so
the
funny?
vaccines didn't help either, because I stopped vaccinating with my third one. But yeah, when we took out the sugars and no soda, like no iced tea, none of those drinks,
I
calm as a
actually
whistle.
I actually remember when I was in college,
Mhm.
and to kind of show you the power of science, right, and why we must, put everything rigorously through the scientific method. They had several studies that looked into the effects of sugar in children, and it was such a wild variability, right, in terms of the effects, that they just assumed, well, because it's a wild variability, therefore there's no correlation. And if there's no correlation, there's no relationship. Therefore, it's unfounded on this idea that sugar affects children. But of course, like we talked about to begin with, whenever you're inviting some of these substances into your body, you become subject to spiritual forces. And here's the one thing about spiritual forces, is that by definition, it's not reliable. It's invariable, right?
Yeah.
Or it's variable, which is, what a spirit does to you today is not necessarily what it's going to do to you tomorrow. And again, proof positive, when you look at things, and everyone kind of looks at something, and everyone feels and comes to the same conclusion about something, because this was something that was very common in the 80s and 90s, where a lot of mothers were saying, hey, I don't think it's good to give children sugar because it makes them super hyper. Right. And then science came in and found out it was unfounded. So come on in and give your children all the sugar that they want. Now, aside from the potential,
now fast forward, Go on,
Remember those
Delphina.
pixie sticks that are just straws, paper
The
straws?
sugar, oh,
that
who could
are
forget
sugar powder?
those?
Remember, it's like,
Yep,
and they openly
Yeah.
said it's like crack for kids, and
yep.
and they giggle about it, but it's true, and it's like that's absolute poison. And here there's a
Absolutely.
whole, and you see it relegated to certain regions of this country, and it's like they openly know that it's really bad, and they giggle about it as they know it's really bad, and
I
then
don't
the effects come on.
I don't know about that because we're entering into what Rudolf Steiner calls the age of Ahriman, and Ahriman's a very different spiritual entity. He's the entity that wants you utterly divorced from any knowledge of the spirit, because you can be easily controlled by the material and material observations the way he wants you
Well,
to
that
be
was really
controlled by.
achieved in the early 1920s and 30s,
Sure.
and also during the Communist Revolution, where the
And
communists declared religion is dead, only
and
science is master.
and mind you, Rudolf Steiner was just before that. So Rudolf Steiner was actually predicting that's exactly where they would go, and he was predicting it in like 1915. So he was on the precipice of this as a spiritual scientist, as he called himself, and but he warned multiple times about why it's so, the deficiencies of the scientific method. And of course, this was the case for me. I was a psychology and economics double major, and while I enjoyed looking into and studying things related to human relationships, which is what both of those are all about, psychology is sort of there. I'm sorry, economics is there to explain your behavior, the behavior of a rational human being, and psychology kind of comes in and explains why that didn't happen, right? Like that's why I was instantly drawn to the two, but I also was turned off by it because the methodology behind it either led to no conclusions, or conclusions that you felt in your deepest heart didn't really address the matter at hand. And this concept with sugar is exactly like that. And the way Ahriman works is Ahriman's going to know that you're going to come up with the conclusion that is inaccurate. Because again, when something is spiritual and when a substance has spiritual significance, it's not going to have reliable outcomes, because the spirit doesn't work in a reliable manner.
So the
Spiritual,
rationalizing mind is the most dangerous mind, because it will not believe its own eyes. It will say that the eyes are lying, and whatever you made up in your head is the
because
absolute
it
truth.
cannot repeat it, because it can't repeat it. The scientific method obsesses over that which you can quantify and that which you can repeat. The problem with the spiritual world is it doesn't repeat, and it's hard to quantify. Right, and the ancients knew this. The ancients knew this when they and then, by the way, religion in particular was no more than the scientific method understanding these other components, and they tried to piece it together with a spiritual standpoint with it, right? Understanding that the spirit exists, and so, but they always were trying to do a spirit first explanation to the world.
So what, not to cut you off, what just entered my mind was, like, look, sugar's used to dumb down people's ability to connect with spirit. And what really came to mind was, I remember back in the day when I was studying ancient Egypt, the pharaohs, the slaves, they would give everybody bread, but they would, have meats. Like the royal family would eat meats, they would eat grapes, they would eat, whatever like fruits and vegetation on the land was on the land, but they would always give the slaves and the people bread to eat. But them themselves wouldn't have bread. And, makes you think, like, now when you fast forward today, what we know about sugar, and well, maybe some people don't know about sugar, but sugar does dumb you down. It does, like, it kind of like numbs you spiritually, and also kind of screws up with your aura, your protective, because everybody has like this protective shield around them. And so the way to keep yourself strong is, one, through diet, two, through meditation, and just having open communication with divine creator, the universe and stuff, in order to protect yourself. But they would use this to enslave people. So fast forward to today.
Isn't there an old Egyptian saying that 3/4 of 1/4 of what you eat keeps you alive? 3/4 of what you eat keeps your doctor alive.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
that's an analogy that you could even state for today. So
I
think
mean,
about it.
nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And you know what? I was looking back in the 1800s and 1700s, and I was looking about the issues of poverty that they had for centuries in Europe and here in America. And guess what? Nothing has changed. That's it. Only your tax rate has gone up.
Yes.
If you start looking at some of these problems, the problems have remained and in many cases have gotten worse.
Absolutely. Think
It's
about this.
amazing.
Well, think about this. You go through like the the lower class neighborhoods, low income family neighborhoods. You have like every bodega that has every freaking kind of sugar retreat right there by
Yep.
the cashier, trying to
Yep.
get the kids. So what are they doing? They're dumbing down all these people, helping these people to remain in poverty. Meanwhile, they have zero clue what the heck is going on. But if you go to those really posh towns, those rich neighborhoods, and you go to their grocery stores, the chances of seeing candy on,
Organic,
or
whole,
yeah, it's all
sugar-free,
organic,
sugar-free
sugar-free.
product. Yep.
Yep. You know, so look what they're doing.
USDA,
They know.
certified
I mean, think of,
organic, no
yes.
GMOs.
So
No,
they know what they're doing. I mean, this is
we
like
were
all
to a
by
bodega
design.
recently, and I was amazed at the stuff that they had in there because they had, you know, those sodas that they're completely off-brand, but the colors of the sodas remind you of cleaning detergents of like, you know, Mr. Clean and like all these other like I have detergents and cleaning agents that were the colors of those sodas, and you know that does not exist in nature.
Yes.
And you're looking at this and you're like, what's the program behind this? And it's like, and then you think to yourself, you know, what's preventing a kid that's like 2 years old from getting into like the cleaning detergent, thinking it's a soda and dying from ingesting poison?
I mean, speaking of that, you remember those kids that were swallowing those Tide Pods?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean,
Oh, I don't
look.
understand this.
Yeah, I know. Look how they manipulated the children and dumbed them down to the point where they would do these kids would do these, you know, eating and consuming Tide Pods.
That
They would be
is
doing
so
videos on it.
dangerous.
Of course it's dangerous, suicidal.
Yeah.
Suicidal. So
But
that's
the
what they're
problem is,
doing.
like those Tide Pods, you know what the really disgusting, nefarious thing about the Tide Pods is that those pods, they dissolve in your stomach, so everything is fine, and then 24 hours later, once you know the detergent is released in your gut, the havoc that causes. I mean, you know, they made that challenge. That's great. And you know what? I'm convinced it's the CIA, it's all these government ABCD agencies that go and they're like, okay, let's do a psyop. Let's see if this is going to work. Let's see if this is going to work. And then they just want to go, because don't forget, with Meta and with Facebook, they want to go and do an entire study that studies the human being from cradle to grave and what influences a person's decision. What are the effects on this? I mean, this is so wide reaching.
Let's put the brakes on a little bit on that. We're pumped. Not put the brakes. Let's slow down and let's focus on that, because again, the number one thing I've learned since going to college, getting my degrees, and then inevitably actually, you know, being so unenamored with the conclusions that science kept coming up with when it came down to human behavior and human living, that you know, to my great shock, you know, 10 years ago or so, 10-12 years ago, I stumbled upon astrology, at least a deeper understanding of astrology, and being really shocked when I put astrology to the test, and really kind of finding out that, like, for me, I was so excited because it was the biggest problem I had with psychology in particular is it never did a great job explaining the impetus. Like, what caused you to do that? You know, rather than talking about trauma and talking about, well, studies show, no, what at that moment,
I think they
caused
still
you to
don't
do
have
that?
a good. I think they
Well,
still
they
don't have a
don't
good grasp on it.
they don't have a grasp on it at all, because again, you know, the biggest problem with
They're
with
trying,
science
but
is
they
that
can't.
the biggest problem with science is that which they do not understand, they basically say it doesn't exist. They have to.
That's true.
They have
That's
to.
what they
Even
say.
if they themselves don't believe what they're saying, the methodology forces them to say that. It's the
Well,
same
no, it's
methodology
also
that led to.
they admitted that they don't have a clue. All of a sudden, their power and their prestige
That's
starts to get
not
eroded.
necessarily the case. That's not necessarily the case, because you have to understand that at some point over the past 200 years, science, which would used to be a pursuit in conjunction with a godly understanding of the universe, became only materialistic, right? And over the past 400 years, that's been the case. We've been going through a I believe we've
Once
been
again,
going
go back to the communist revolution
well
where they wanted to
that
completely
that
divorce
these are
themselves
these
from
are these are
silly notions of the old world and create a new world. Okay,
these are
the new
material.
world
Yes,
where
we
science,
understand that.
God,
We
and
understand that,
ration
but
and logic and reason.
sure, yes, we understand that, but those are materialistic explanations, which are more Earth oriented. We've been going through a long period of just Jupiter and Saturn having conjunctions in what element of science?
Mm.
Earth science. And so we've been going through Earth science for a long time here. If you're studying from if you're not going from a sidereal standpoint, we only just had in tropical astrology, we only just had the first air sign
I think we should also explain to the viewer what is the difference between sidereal and tropical, because we all know, but there's a lot of people that are going to listen to this and it's going to sound like gibberish. So how about we explain it?
Yeah, this is going to be way Debbie better at that.
Yeah, well, basically it's just a perspective, from the Earth. The tropical sign, this tropical system says the stars are fixed. And the stars are moving, and sidereal says the stars are fixed. Everything always remains the same, but based on that system, that's where the difference is. But there's another.
The tropical is practiced in the West, meaning
Yeah.
in Europe and in North America, South America as well. And if you go and open up a magazine like a Vogue or Cosmopolitan or any of those other bullshit rags, which are full of nothing but disgusting garbage, when you look at your horoscope, that is a tropical based horoscope.
They are and I should say real quick, the tropical is really also seasonal. So
it's seasonal. Well, this is the problem that I have with these people that are doing when they're doing the zodiac readings in the magazines. They're only using your sun sign, right? Your sun sign is based on the season. But the thing is, in Vedic astrology, the sun is not like, for instance, if you're born August 7th, you would think, oh, you're a Leo, so your sun is in Leo, but not necessarily, because in sidereal system, Vedic sidereal system, the sun is in Cancer, so there's definitely a degree. And the other thing that's different between tropical and sidereal is that there's a 23 to 24 degree difference.
Yeah. It's not a full sign difference.
Yeah,
so for example, for me, I'm a Leo, whether it's tropical or sidereal.
So for someone listening to this who doesn't know anything about horoscopes, the short answer is, number one, tropical is the bullshit, very cheap, watered down version that you will find in all of those magazine and gossip rags. It is useless. If you want to learn more about your horoscope, you should go and read up your natal chart. What is a natal chart? Put it into Google, or if you don't like Google, go to DuckDuckGo and put in natal chart. Astro Cafe is for free. You put in where you were born, the time, because all of that has an influence on who you are as a person, and it will tell you aspects of your life, who you're going to marry, what your job is going to be, what successes you're going to have. And if you want to go into Vedic astrology, which has been practiced for thousands of years, I'm saying this because there are people out there that don't have a clue.
I just want to say,
go ahead.
To be fair, there's a reason why there's a debate between the tropical and the sidereal.
Yeah, there's big fights and stuff over it all over the internet.
But there are, because I still think there's something to it. To both systems, and the question is was it speaking towards? And I do tend to think that as I've grown in my spiritual life, because the tropical astrology spoke better to where I was when I was 18. And I felt that as I developed and became more of a person, my the tropical didn't quite explain things to me as much
Let
as
me
it used
tell you
to. I was
something. If
I was
I
actually
had sidereal and my natal chart read at 18 properly and all this other bullshit, I would have not made a whole shit ton of mistakes. And I am upset. And it was villainy of the high order of tropical horror.
Let me say
everything
this.
happens for a reason.
Everything does happen for a reason, but let me say
I
this.
know that's what my natal chart
In
said.
all-
My natal chart said I would have lots of delays.
In all
Lord, it was
fairness,
so accurate.
in all fairness, there are some really super amazing Western tropical astrologers out there, you know,
Yes.
but they're even just as amazing. I was eating nuts before I started this video, so now it's like in my throat.
Have a drink of water. Yeah.
I was just doing it. I'm gonna actually have honey in a second, but the different look, there's amazing astrologers, both Western and Vedic sidereal. Okay. The problem is the reader, number one. The other issue is with Vedic astrology, they have so many different divisional charts and it's so much more accurate. I mean, in Western they would say I'm a Cancer, but I am nothing like a Cancer ascendant. I am very much a Gemini. I love to read, research, I'm always multitasking. You guys know my life. I'm always trying to do everything in one shot. That's really a Gemini ascendant, but someone who's always constantly learning in some way, shape, or form. But look, I want to make it clear because I wrote notes on a video that I did based on discussing the two systems. So Vedic astrology, sidereal system, traditionally sidereal system uses the fixed star system. Tropical system, again, it's the moving zodiac, it's the moving stars. They believe that the stars move. Both use 12 zodiac signs, Aries through Pisces. Okay, the other difference is, with Western, it's more about like psychological makeup, personality of the native, how the past life influences their current life. Sidereal, it's more like, it's about the journey of the soul, past and present life, where you're coming from, where you're headed. So it also identifies like the physical, psychological, mental, situations
Don't
that
you think
are in
people
life.
would be better off knowing that it's like, listen,
Absolutely.
you keep reincarnating here, and it's like, because if people think, and also this nihilism and this hedonism that people are going and engaging right now, it's fucking up your karma, which means you're going to reincarnate into some bullshit lower life form. And don't you think, hold on, and don't you think it would be better served that if people knew, hey, you're an old soul or a new soul, and in this lifetime you have to do XYZ in order to ascend to the next level, or else you're going to go and reincarnate into a lower life form. I think this is the great lie that people don't know.
When I do readings, right, I tell people about their chart. I tell them who they are, the things that they were experiencing, why they were experiencing this, what their purpose is in their life, how to heal certain things in their life. I help them focus a lot on the present situation. I do make predictions, obviously, and I love making predictions. You guys know that, but my focus is helping people.
They're all right, by the way, because you told me something and 30 minutes later it happened. I'm like, oh my God.
I've been having many of my clients reaching back to me saying the same thing. They're saying it's really bizarre.
No, so it's like usually whenever I have a reading, I feel very confident, and guess what? It always happens. So I'm like,
right,
okay.
And this is good. Again, we highly recommend, if you have any questions about where you're going in your life, what you're doing, to give Debbie a call, because it's just worth it. It's just worth it.
Shouldn't we basically link her at the bottom of this video description?
We can do that. But again, let's pull it back because we're getting a little way off topic here. I mean, it's
look,
the original concept, what we're talking about here, was specifically with regards to over the past 400 years. So for the past 400 years, there's been a major conjunction occurring. It happens every 20 years or so. It's Jupiter and Saturn. These are the two biggest planets in the zodiac. They meet, and the sign that they meet in, this happens again once every 20 years, kind of sets the themes for what's been going on for the next 20 years, right? It's only just recently that, like back in December of 2020, we had a recent one that was in Capricorn sidereally. It's the first one in about 400 years that occurred in in an air sign, in Aquarius, tropically. But it doesn't change the fact that over the past 380, 400 years or so, it's been occurring in the earth signs. And the earth signs are exactly that. It's materially focused.
Absolutely.
It's practically focused. It's actually, the funny thing is the earth and water signs have a direct relationship with each other, but they're also divorced from each other. So the spiritual manifests itself in the material, which eventually impacts the spiritual again.
Yep.
Right. But what we've been doing over the past 400 years, because it's been a very earth focused period in time, eventually we've lost our spirit, and we've lost our connection to spirit, and the majority of our society has become too practical, so much so that because it couldn't practically understand or control or speak towards the spiritual, eventually, very practically, they just disregarded it. And the methodologies themselves are, sure, they led to that occurring, but again, never look at the world through a mundane in this case, in a colloquial context, which is sort of, oh, I can just explain it by piecing these things together, boom, right? No. Every time, even if you can explain something through a simple concept of, well, the reason why science got rid of the spirit is because it can't measure the spirit, so that's why I got rid of it. Yes, but there's a spirit behind why they decided to do that, right? And the spirit behind why they decided to do it is because we've been in a earth age, and that earth energy looks at it and says, I can't use this. I can't control this. I can't. And a big part of earth energy has been control, right? And so that's a big part of the reason why we've been having this excessive amount of control for the sake of what? Making the most amount of money. And what signs associate with money? Again, that'd be the earth signs. Taurus, right. Yeah. And of course, everything we've been talking about prior to that, with regards to the spirit and the health, well, that's its relationship between Pisces and Virgo, right? And so what your daily eating, daily routines, that's found in Virgo, but it directly impacts what happens in Pisces. Because everything, these signs are directly
absolutely. So that, we were talking earlier about food, and think about it, food.
Pulling it back, baby, pulling it back.
Spirits, think about it. Alcohol is a very physical thing, but once you consume it, you end up having a very spiritual experience. And Virgo and Pisces are opposite to one another, which brings that whole thing about. And then think about Capricorn and Cancer. Capricorn, that's a 10th house, that's career, that's authority, that's bosses, and opposite we have Cancer, which is home, happiness, our security.
What happens at work ends up coming back home.
100%. Yes,
and
exactly.
Vice versa.
Doesn't your boss drink a lot to get in contact with the spirit?
Well, that's exactly. It's my boss. She comes from a long line of witches, and they're actual witches. Her mother she's caught her mother conjuring demons when she was a young girl, and actually killing chickens and killing.
Sounds like
small
Santeria.
Animals. Yep, it's Santeria, exactly. Yeah. And that's what it was. And so she was, and
isn't there that story that you told me that she came down the stairs when she was 6 years old?
Yep.
And on the kitchen table, there was like a straight up demon there.
Yep.
And the mother just said to ignore it and to go on, as she was going.
And she doesn't. No, she doesn't practice the dark art. She doesn't, she doesn't do anything. But she's big on using cards. But she can only use the cards when she has a few drinks. And when she reads the cards, everyone is just like, yo. And I go, we're actually in a part right now with her life where I'm kind of trying to nudge her into kind of being like, hey, you have these gifts, you might want to use them for something, and maybe it will actually, kind of unleash the valve in her career, because she's at a certain point where she's not happy.
That's so career, interesting. She needs to get buzzed in order to have access.
She does it. If she doesn't have alcohol, it doesn't come through. And she does a lot of spiritual practices and whatnot. So she does keep those habits alive. But, in terms of her connection with spirits, it only happens when she drinks alcohol. When she drinks alcohol, then it starts coming out. and then she'll whip out the cards and be like, "Ooh, shala," and there it is.
That's
man.
so
And it's
funny.
like,
See, for me, as soon as I sit in my chair or I'm sitting down ready to do a reading, I am ready. But once I step away from like my computer or my phone, when I'm stepping out of work, like I will be tuned, I will just tune it off. I'll ignore everything unless I'm sitting down and I'm being quiet. That's when it hits me. The other time it hits me is when I'm driving, but that's because I'm sitting down.
but at the
Because
same time too, you're
but then I learned that I have, like, when I work, I have tunnel vision. I tune everything out. Like my husband goes to me, "You're very strange." He goes, "How do you not notice things?" I'm like, when we're driving, right? He's like, "How'd you not notice that person? How'd you not notice this?" Because when I go to the store, I'm in the car, I'm like, destination, that's my goal. When I'm in a store looking for that, that's my goal. Like I'll tune other things out unless I'm like sitting at the standing at the cash register, and then I'll like pay attention to what's going on around me. But that's pretty much like me when I'm doing work. I immediately tune in, and as soon as I stop working, I'm off. Because people go to me, "Oh, do you always get messages everywhere you go?" And I'm like, honestly, no. It's like when I'm ready to do the work, I'm tuned in. I turn it off. And now it's like literally like a light switch, on, off, like I won't be so in tune when I step outside, because I'm like, okay, work is over. I got to be a mom now, right? I got to go food shopping. I got to be a wife and entertain my husband at dinner.
Well, at that stage of the game, I would say consider yourself blessed because with my boss, her spiritual gifts are out of control. Like they
Wow.
don't. They're out of control in the sense of, to a certain extent, where I'm not very comfortable sometimes where she's throwing it out there, because sometimes I just don't want that in my life, because I know that with those spirits, though she doesn't mean any harm, she becomes a conduit of
She's
spirits
open.
that may.
That's the problem.
Right,
She's open. She hasn't. There's
she
only
becomes
one.
open and there's no control.
Yeah, for anyone that's listening, that's looking to to get control over their, because I had the same issue, but the only thing that really honed me down, and I'm going to be honest with the audience, saying daily prayers, doing daily meditation, listening to my mantras daily. That was the only thing that really helped me stay grounded. When I was younger, before I had children, going out for walks, having that time for myself. Those are the things that grounded me. Otherwise, forget it. My husband said, you were like an open portal. He's like, there's just no way. Like, because it got to the point, like, even at home, I have to sage my home every single evening before we all go to sleep, because spirits, I'm literally, because I'm a psychic medium and a Vedic astrologer, I literally am like a lighthouse in the middle of the night. And then, they see me, they spot me out, and then they want to communicate with me. But I'm like, no, I'm going to bed. I don't want to be bothered. So then they'll bother my family members. Like, I'll be sleeping throughout the night, but everybody else will be awake. So it's like, I also have to be considerate of the people that I live with, and do such rituals as, saging every evening or lighting frankincense to make sure nothing's going to come and bother my family. Because when do they also visit the most? Like spirits and ghosts, like when you're sleeping, right?
Yep.
And they send you like, that's
you're open.
Absolutely. Like even my dad, when he comes to visit, I remember not this year, but like a few years ago, it was before, when was he? Oh yeah, it was like before 219 started. I was sleeping, I'm in bed, and he goes, Elizabeth, he's saying, Elizabeth, Lisa. And I'm like, I opened my eyes. I'm like, Dad, I was so tired. I'm like, talk to me in the morning. And he's like yelling at me, and I'm like so damn tired. Like, honestly, I'm terrible as a psychic medium when it comes to talking to my family, because I literally will tell them I'm tired, so talk to me in the morning, when they really don't come that often to bother you. I mean, seriously. But my point being is that they come, when you're the most receptive, because all the noise is off when you're sleeping. That's when your mind is most receptive. You're not, bombarded by work, television, radio, music, people around you. That's when you're the most receptive, is when you're sleeping. That's why they say witching hours at 3 a.m., because it's like, it's literally at that time before day starts to come along. So yeah, it's very interesting. But people definitely need to be grounded in those methods: meditation, mantras, daily prayers, having open communication with divine creator, have to do it every day. That's how it helps. And also always imagining a white light around you. That's really important, to help like create that protective force field around yourself.
It's we'll have to talk about
To the skeptics, because here's the problem. It's like, we know that this stuff is real. You see it everywhere, except there's a whole bunch of people are like, oh, this is all make believe, this doesn't exist.
So here's, I could right off the bat, I'm going to tell you straight up, and this is again, and this is the idea of, if God intends you to have this, right? Like, we do live in an age where your average person is here to experience the Ahrimanic life, and the Ahrimanic life meaning you're divorced from the spirit, you're very materialistic, you're here to look at the world from a very different lens, and I do believe suffer the consequences, and they're meant to. It's like, these are people that didn't incarnate to, because I'm not of the belief that that I'm going to go ahead and reawaken everyone else to the spiritual world. The only people that we can reawaken it to are the people who have lived enough life and are honest enough with themselves, and they have the ability to believe their own two eyes. Because this my experience with the spiritual largely was, as much as I wanted to believe the material explanation left me dissatisfied, because I knew better. I looked at things and I'm like, no, I know in my own personal experiences that what you just came up with in your study didn't match what actually happens in real life. And beyond that, the reason why I could say that is because I understood the deficiencies of the method. The methodology is all based on what you can observe. And my biggest problem with science in its entirety is understanding that science does not understand the impulse. They explain it away. And there's so many people out there that will just accept that, because they're not meant to think for themselves. They're meant to trust those
which brings
who are in.
Which brings me to a point. I think, look, just in general, I think having a healthy skepticism is important, because it's part of your ability to be discerning. I mean, even me, myself, there's times that I make predictions and I'm like, oh man, I'm like, this sounds so freaking far-fetched, but I'm like, I'm going to say it anyways. If I'm wrong and I'm embarrassed, no freaking big deal. I'm human, right? And then things end up starting to, play out. And then I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't tell you how many readings I've done where I'm saying this and this is going to happen. And then my clients come back to me. I'm like, no freaking way. like I never knew, but it's only because, I think it's important to have a healthy skepticism. But those people that are very detached from spirit, where all has to be science-based, there's no God, there's no this, has to be proven to me, that very materialistic mentality where everything has to be of like physical evidence. I've seen it. This is my perspective. My perspective is this: one, it can be seen as a karmic curse, because you're being denied. You're being denied that, that natural born connection.
You're being denied truth.
Yeah, you're being denied truth because, you probably, maybe you did something really effed up spiritually. So now you have to like find your way back to God again. So you're gonna be increased with this like, skepticism about everything. You're gonna be skeptical about everything. That's one thing. The other thing too, is, like I was saying, due to the karma thing, it could just be, like I said, it's just a karmic experience. It's a karmic experience because there's something that you need to learn deeper about connecting with divine creator that you didn't quite grasp in the past. So, it could be a negative or a positive thing, but either way, karmically, whatever we experience karmically, that's something that we've designed for ourselves. Okay. That's not something that God says, I'm going to punish you. It's our very important to understand
that everything comes to the spirit. We aren't just even primarily spiritual beings. Everything comes to the spirit. The material is probably the least important aspect of our existence. But while it's least important, it doesn't mean it's unimportant. That's something I always like to say. In other words, get a job, make your money, pay your bills, do this, take care of yourself. Like, these things matter. But at the same time too, you're still bound by what the spirit gives you. But the biggest thing people have to understand is that even those who are skeptical and big on science, I've talked to these people, I knew these people, and I can tell you that they've resigned themselves and they've put faith into the systems that they created. And anytime you resign yourself to something and you basically and you resign yourself in having faith in a system, you're taking you're taking self-discipline out of it. You're taking you're taking your own personal mind out of it. And when you do that, something else occupies it in its space. And when you talk to these people about matters of the spirit, I'm telling you, you will see it in their faces. They glass over. And you're no longer talking to that person. You're talking to the spirit that now occupies that area that should have been occupied by them in their own spirit, but they've given it off to the system, right? And again, this is, and we should definitely have an episode on Rudolf Steiner, because I think
they've set it aside. Yeah, we should.
They've set it aside, but because understanding this concept, this is the reason why the 7 deadly sins are the 7 deadly sins, and these are sins of that are related to your inability to self-regulate and to your inabilities to self-control, and so this is greed. It's greed, lust. I don't know them offhand. I just, but you know what they are. Yeah, envy, but the sloth.
Yep.
Right. And the reason why they are what they are is because these are sins that you have control over. These are sins that, in your relationship with Christ, in particular, from the Christian standpoint, in the Christian standpoint, if you work with Christ, you can get control of these things. Because if you don't have, if you don't have control of this, guess who does? The spiritual world. Right? That's the concept. Everything in your life is either controlled by you in connection with the spirit, or it's controlled by the spirit. And you see this when you talk to people, when you start speaking to some aspect of them that should have been developed, you will watch as their eyes glaze over. And the scientists in particular, when you talk about the spirit, watch them. You are no longer talking to them anymore. You're talking to a spirit that has control of them. And it's just, and this is something you only understand when you develop your relationship and understanding of the spiritual world. And it's by extension why I have such little respect for science as much as I do. This is why this whole culture of, I trust the science really strikes me as I trust God.
You're saying that people are limited they're basically limited.
No, of course they're limited, but it's what they're limited towards. And this has been the problem of the past 400 years, is that in the name of practicality and that which we can have control over, we've given up our relationship with the thing that we have the least amount of control over, which is the spiritual world. But just because we have the least amount of control over it,
because this is 100% accurate, but what do you then say to like a Tony Robbins or to someone like myself, which will then adopt the Luciferic point of view, whereas I create my own destiny. I am limitless. I have only the limits that I set for myself. I have only the boundaries I set for myself. So for me, it's
to that person, I would say at that single moment, I would say at that single moment, first and foremost, that's actually a lie, right? Because this is the idea that Lucifer tells the truth and the whole truth is not necessarily it's not exactly something I would probably take.
What I would say with someone,
I'm not going to say that Lucifer tells the truth and whatnot. We're not debating whether Lucifer is good or bad.
No, we are. I understand it, but and this is kind of the whole concept in terms of being limitless. You are limitless in your connection with God, not in your connection to yourself in opposition to God, which has always been the problem of Lucifer altogether. Is he's trying to get the individual to understand that, well, the Godhead exists in you. Well, the Godhead exists in a flower. Is the flower going to rise up and challenge God? It's like no, it's a silly concept.
The flower was not created in God's image. Apparently, we were. Now, of course, hold on. If we go down,
hold on.
Wait, if you you know who the real gods are that created us in their image? Those
God
ETs.
what created us? Because I'm pretty sure what created us is the exact same thing that's shutting down the nuclear reactors, so that we don't have a nuclear war that affects other dimensions.
Well, that's a separate thing
Ding,
we don't
ding,
want to get
ding.
on today. Yeah,
We're
ding,
gonna
ding,
we're
ding,
gonna
but I
talk
don't
about that
want to
in
jump on the
another
That's
episode.
that's a different day for sure. But again, I mean, look, I love talking about the Lucifer concept to a certain extent because Lucifer, he speaks of a truth, but the best lies are 99% true, right? And like
True.
I said,
Like
you
that,
know,
like I
it comes
like I
really
said with
hate
someone else.
the dumb because you listen, I'm pretty sure that everyone hates the stupid. You only like the stupid insofar as to you can use them to achieve your means. Once you've achieved your means, that's when they're the first ones to fall. For example, all these rioters and looters, they don't understand that they're being played by the system that's letting them do this. In the meantime, every piece of authority knows exactly where they are. And if anyone knows about the military technology that they have with these planes that fly overhead and capture your data, you think your VPN is going to keep you safe, homies? No. They could read all your text right now. They could see everything that you got on your phone right now. And they have a plane right now that captures large swaths of data and then they analyze it. But that's neither here nor there. What I'm going back to is the Luciferic ideal of being limitless. And when I say limitless, we have been locked down as humans. For example, that video that I sent to you, you people, of like this guy who's sleepwalking and he's walking on water like Jesus. And this is from a home
That was
security
so damn
camera.
incredible. That was so
They say
incredible.
scientists, but hold on a second. They say, and like scientists will say that sometimes when people are like these and that's why they have been studying dreams and super deep sleep, because they say that like you start going on a different frequency, different levels, and that the laws of physics don't apply, which then
That's
tells me
right.
only one thing: we are limitless if we only know how to unlock what has been locked within us.
Yes, but
And
how are
there's
they
a
keeping us
therefore.
locked? But they want us to keep us locked, and they
Yep.
only want to use us for their own agenda. Hence, they created the freaking stupid television, the freaking radio,
Yep.
and
Yep.
addicted social media, which I do get addicted to social media myself. That I have to like. Thank God I have my family, because then I'm like, shit, I gotta step away.
and you have
Yep.
you have real conversations like this one, and
Yes,
you develop
yes.
using you. And again,
Which
we
I
met
love
through
these
too.
combos.
And well, we went through social
But
media,
it's
so there's
also
good
the
in it.
algorithms
But
of social media
but
have used the same type
so
of studies as they use on rats addicted to cocaine and sugar.
well,
All of these are studies based to like
yes.
how to go and manipulate the human, how
So
to get them hooked on something and keep them hooked.
yes, but keep in mind, there's a conflicting relationship between these inventions that came from an Earth age, right? And we're entering into an air age. That's not technically, it's like an Earth sub age. Sorry, we're leaving a water age, the age of Pisces. But we've been going through a pretty intense Earth age where everything's very practical, everything's very materialistic, everything is about what works and what we can know that works, and at the same time too, what can be used to exploit people, right? Always understand that Earth energy isn't as sadistic as we make it out to be. Which is sort of this idea: we created social media to control you. No, we created social media because we looked at something, said, hey, we can do this, and I think we can make a lot of money because people will like it. And then someone comes in and goes, hey, I know what else I can do with it, right?
Yep.
That's usually how this works.
Absolutely,
And the powers that be are reactive; they're not proactive. This is why I'm not entirely too worried about the three-letter agencies and what have you, because as much as we like to think that they're controlling things from an Earth standpoint, which is reactive.
Speaking
You
of
know,
those
they're completely
agencies,
stupid.
speaking of those
Listen.
agencies, I'm looking forward, because in my lifetime they're all going to come down, and I'm looking forward to that. Like I'm
Next
yeah.
really
from
looking
these
forward
Oh,
to
yeah.
that.
agencies, do you
Oh,
think
yeah.
they're smart? They're
No,
fucking. Let me tell you something.
well,
I don't have contempt.
I-
Well, actually, no, I do have
I-
contempt for
but-
people. I'll be on. Well, everybody knows. Everyone that knows me knows that I have contempt for lots of different types of people, especially those that they are mediocre, but they believe that they are like an action hero on Call of Duty, and they do things without thinking about the repercussions about what they're doing. They have tunnel vision. They're stupid. They're trained. They're 5% trained, 30%, objective. And then they do those objectives because they come from these comfortable suburban, nice homes that are,
they're not poor, they're middle average. Sometimes they're middle income, sometimes upper income, well, most of the time middle income, but they have such a disdain and they have such a God complex, and they are so basic. When I say base, I mean, and they lick the feet of anyone who has a lot of money, and they obsess about the people that have a lot of money. And I'm not going to tell anyone my background because I like to stay in the shadows, but obviously this is going to make people really interested, but I really don't care. But
Well,
if you understand these
Those are
people,
the people
they
that have
will
been
do
brainwashed.
anything. They will
well,
do anything
I
to
get
go and
again.
get the favoritism of someone that's like,
I
oh, nobody knows about this person, but they're super duper rich, and
I
this is
just
what
want
they
to. I
do.
just.
It's like,
I'm
oh
going to
my
interrupt real
God.
quick.
That's why
Let me
people
interrupt
need to learn. Hold on. I'm sorry.
Yes,
I'm sorry.
go.
That's why people need to learn self-worth, the value. And that's why
Right.
people should get an astrology reading or any moment they have, so they understand the value of themselves and their children.
And
So
and
we
keep
can
in mind
change these
everything that you just described is Earth energy.
Yep.
Earth energy is all of that. Everything is about, you know, why are they always interested in terms of appeasing those that have wealth? Because that's what Earth energy is.
Well,
You know,
yeah, Taurus,
a human
self-worth.
Taurus,
Taurus is all about
and
self-worth.
it's all about how can I connect to more money, and
And
further
how
than
can I
that,
make more money
met
for
these
my
people,
worth?
they're
we're
so stupid. Like,
yes, because
on a
Earth's energy is
personal
kind of dumb.
level, they're so basic. And then, you know what the thing is? The best thing
Earth
about these
energy
guys
is
in the
kind of dumb.
agencies is that they're all chasing the paycheck, and they
And this
all
is
just want to be employed because they think that they have prestige from being employed in these agencies, and they're all chasing the 9 to 5. And it's like, okay, I'm not going to curse,
You made
but
a
anyway,
good point.
but
Hold
it's
on a
like you're
second.
never going to get
Hold on.
rich
You
getting
made
a
a really
paycheck.
good point. Chasing the paycheck, because
Right.
while they're chasing the paycheck, they have no time to think about anything else. They have no time to really do research. They have no time to engage spiritually. They have no time to really think about the deeper meaning of
How
relationships,
about a
people,
moral
places, and things.
compass?
And that,
They
yeah, but
have
none of
no
that-
time to
that-
even question their moral compass because they're
Moral
too busy
compass-
chasing a paycheck. That's why in
But we're-
America, think about this. My background's European, right? When I go to visit my family, right? When I go to Europe, it's all laid back. People do their work. That's it. No big deal. Lunch. Yeah. Have a great day. You go home. You forget about work. That's it. It's all family, friends, whatever. They're not thinking, I got to work extra hours. I got to do this to make that paycheck. No matter what, they deal with what they have and they make the best out of it. And the community and the society, it's all about engaging with people, with friends, with humanity, doing down to earth things, going out in the freaking mountains, to the beach, to the rivers, whatever it is. But here in the US, it's like, I gotta work 50 weeks out of the year to make sure that I could go on that one vacation, to like Aruba for that 1 week. And when I get home, I have no time really to do anything or have much fun because I have to be busy working my tail off because I have to pay the bills. I have to
But
pay
don't
the
they understand
electricity.
this
I
is a
have to do
rat
this.
race that's stacked
Well,
against
that's the
them?
thing. That's the energy. It is the rat
That's
race
the energy, and
That's the energy.
it's the more, and again, which is an Earth energy, and again, the reason why I keep mentioning the type of energy we're going into is we're coming very close to going to more of an air energy. So and air is going to take social media and it's going to use it and it's going to connect people like us together, right? Like, it was Earth energy with
Well, no, now it's
that
getting scary. Did you
I-
see the latest craze on the internet where people are sinking millions of dollars to buy up real estate on the internet?
yeah,
No, this is
I
an
know,
actual thing.
I know, which yes, and
Well,
I
yes,
don't.
that's actually crazy. I mean, my
It
God,
is.
it's like
It
buying
is.
air. It's absolutely insane. It's like buying air. You know what that reminds me? It's like buying air rights in New York City without
So-
the
Yes, that's
intention
exactly
of
what
building.
it is.
Well, yes, and keep in mind if I
Buying
would
air
be
rights for those
interested.
that
I would
know
be
it, don't know
interested.
it's a real estate thing.
I haven't looked into this too deeply, but that to me would be we're still safe if we're talking about buying real estate in a fantasy world. We're talking about something that's related to a water sign at that point.
Yeah.
Because water energy is about that which isn't real at all.
Yeah.
Or it isn't
I'll tell
physically
you this much.
tangible, but
When I
it's
first
tangible
heard
in
about it, I was like, and then it's like my friend is like, by the way, this is the hottest investment tip. And I'm like looking at him and I had so many I had so many conflicting emotions because I'm like, wait a second. And because one emotion is like, oh shit, I don't have enough money right now to buy the best real estate because probably someone with like, that has billions has gone already there. And then my next thought was, You dumb moron. The internet is limitless because they're always creating it. And then the next voice in my head was like, wait a second, what if the internet's not limitless? And then this is how people go legitimately crazy, because all of a sudden I had all these conflicting conflicts where it's like, wait a second, this could be a really good investment deal.
And
But then I thought to
I
myself, the 2000 .com bubble, and then I
let's
calmed myself down and walked away.
And on top of that too, let's also understand that like there's a difference between chasing the dollar, which is kind of what you were conflicted with, because you're talking about chasing the dollar right there, and actually focusing on investments that also are in line with your spiritual worth and value as well. In other words, it may not, this may not make you as much money, but it's more in line with what it is that you're called to do on this planet, right? Which is, to my estimation, immensely more important, rather than saying, let me go buy some of this real estate in a virtual world. That at that stage in the game, I have strong ethical problems with that, because if we're really buying, if we're buying into a reality that doesn't exist, that to me is the lowest vibration of what we're heading into. So I personally, just from a moral standpoint, I wouldn't even touch it.
Well, you never want to sleep on the next Amazon. But then I thought to myself, wait a second, the internet is, well, from one perspective, it does have a limit to it, but the other perspective, no, because it's always expanding, because there are capabilities of having it expand. You just need to build the systems for it. And then what nobody else is talking about is there's a whole lot of shit on the internet that you have to clean up, that nobody still has like figured out how to really clean. Because when they say they scrub something from the internet, no, you don't scrub anything, because anyone who's a forensic, anyone that knows anything that you do on the internet, say on the internet, type on the internet, it is on there forever. And anyone who's a skilled forensics, what is it called? I forget what it's called, but there's a whole team of people that go in there. You posted something there in 2006, it's on there. You posted something there in 1995, and you wrote something, we could find it. And that's why it's clogged with all these dead things. And then of course the other thing is, where they can argue that it does have a limit to it, don't forget all these people that opened up internet accounts and all these things and never shut them down after they died. And so you're gonna have a whole lot of like, and that's the next frontier of how you start cleaning up the internet, even though it's you have to go and release was it the IP, the processors, the cores that store everything on there. You have to go in there and start cleaning that up.
Yeah, because you know what the internet is like? The internet is like the Akashic records, the Hall of Records.
Yes,
where it never gets taken out. It's always there. So
we have to clean that, because at a certain point it's going to get cluttered, and then as anything that gets cluttered, it's not going to be as robust. And I guess that's what someone is going and sounding the alarm while going presenting a real estate opportunity, saying, hey, you could buy this plot, and it's always going to be here. And then from that standpoint, that's like, it's like the Akashic records, and then it can become crowded, and then you won't be able to do business because there was only a certain type of bandwidth and whatnot. Okay, you could argue it from that standpoint, but every single time when they do the processing powers and they do the internet high speeds and whatnot, you would think that they're also going and updating the systems to be able to produce and also create more storage and more space. So I mean, we go into that, but
well, I don't want to go into that, because I think we
it's just
we
a
all need
side
to
note.
know.
But for anyone wondering about, oh my God, has this investment tip passed me by?
It's a thing right now. My personal opinion on that is, I'm not very interested in exploiting, because we would be exploiting a terrible weakness in humanity.
It is a terrible weakness. Yep.
Because it's the only reason why it would be valuable is
thinking it's a scam, but what?
No,
maybe it's not. I don't know.
No, the reason why you don't really know it is because we're having conversations like this, which is to say we're kind of slightly broken free from the matrix. There are people out there that are diving so hardcore into the matrix that is the reason why I think this has value. And from a moral and ethical standpoint, and from a spiritual standpoint, I would be hard pressed as to what good it would do, unless of course God called me and said, look, dude, you need to make money for what you're about to do, so go buy this here. But I am very trepidatious in terms of the concept. But speaking, let's go. I think we've exhausted this topic for as much as possible because there's a lot of things we can talk about. But let's go back into the real world because we just got through talking about the fake world. And we were hoping to talk about this a little bit. And this is obviously going back into the last discussion we had. Kyle Rittenhouse.
Jeez, man.
You want to talk about something that's very odd to me, but at the same time not. Okay, so this is an interesting scenario because his and another case, and we'll talk about that, the Ahmaud Arbery case. They have, again, significance for us in terms of a value standpoint, but I still think Rittenhouse is much more the case of values than Arbery. But Rittenhouse altogether, very bizarre what's been going on since he got acquitted. I think to me it's bizarre because he's very he set things off with
an interview he did. He did with Tucker
Carlson, which, by the way, right after he gets the acquittal. I know they've been doing this all throughout, the process, but this interview that he had, I think it aired on Monday, was so surreal to me because of how he came off throughout the whole interview and who he brought up in the interview. And I don't know if you want to give your opinions on it. I have tons, but I'll let you, Debbie, to start it off. I think it's
okay. So Kyle, I didn't watch the whole interview, but Kyle Rittenhouse goes on Tucker Carlson. He calls out Linwood. Okay, he calls out Linwood, and that that kind of like sent this ripple effect out on social media, especially those Q followers that are so supportive of Linwood. A lot of people are supportive of Linwood because Linwood is supportive of who? Supportive of Donald Trump. So apparently, Kyle Rittenhouse is in a battle with Linwood for like a $2 million bail money or something along those lines. Am I understanding that right?
There was that whole concept is there was I don't know the full details of this one, but there's $2 million that were raised for Kyle to be bailed out of jail.
Yeah.
But the specific turn of events isn't exactly as how Kyle Rittenhouse said it was.
Mm-hmm.
Because basically what Kyle was saying is, hey, I could have been bailed out in September, of this or whatever it was, and he, and Linwood was saying it was better for me to stay in jail. But there's nothing but conflicting reports between Robert Barnes, who is very like, hey, I don't want to have to, jump into this. All I'm going to tell you is how things were done professionally. And long story short is Robert Barnes basically said Linwood's in the clear. Like, I mean, he's, he was very judicious about the Bond affair. Linwood has on his Telegram a ton of posts, lots of receipts. The thing with Linwood, if you ever follow him on Telegram, really hard to argue.
Yeah,
he really comes off as someone who,
just for people that don't know, Linwood is a very seasoned attorney in North Carolina. Okay, he's also affiliated with the Republican Party. He's very old school, very I can't say spiritual. I want to say religious follower, right?
Very religious. Yep.
Very religious
he's
follower.
Classic Jesus Christ is
classic.
king, and which I'm not anti that, mind you.
Yeah.
You have a better connection to spirituality through classic Christianity. Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior than you do what most of these other secular people do. So
yeah.
Well, you guys know how he found Jesus, right?
No, how Linwood found Jesus?
Let me break it down for you.
So
what happened was, I guess he grew up in like a really dysfunctional household, and there was some bullshit going on, and he became an attorney, blah blah blah. But I guess he was a massive drinker and whatnot, and I guess his work his work basically went and messed
Oh
with
no,
his
this is
mind.
probably one of the things. I'm just reading it. When he was 16 years old, he came home to find that his father had beaten his mother to death. That
Yeah.
and Lynn Sr. pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter. So I'm pretty sure that that became precedent to making his choice to want to be a lawyer.
What I also do know is that he was the lawyer defending the parents in the JonBenet Ramsey case.
Yes, yes.
Yep.
Which, FYI, I don't want to take this too far because we got to talk about that in another video. But apparently, if anyone's been following that case with JonBenet Ramsey and Ghislaine Maxwell, there's a connection between Ghislaine
Yep.
Epstein and the Ramseys. We got to talk
Yep.
about that in another video. Okay,
Yeah,
take it back
the
for us.
Ramsey father is all sorts of shady, and we're not going to get into that. But let's just say around that time, Linwood started to find Jesus, and he was drinking. No, he didn't find Jesus then. He started drinking really heavily.
Yeah.
So it's like, so that makes perfect sense why he would start drinking very heavily, because as we all know, when the coroner was examining the body of that 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey, what did he find? An abnormally dilated, vaginal canal,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
which we all know what that means. I'm gonna
Yep.
leave it
Yep.
there.
Which he's been dropping bombs about child sex trafficking on.
Mhm,
You know,
And-
so
and real quick,
obviously, go.
I
Which
do have to
then
say, like,
makes
when it
me
comes down to,
very suspicious of MTG Marjorie Taylor Greene. How the hell
so
can a
that's,
woman that
let's take
openly
this,
endorses
let's
Q
take this back.
in this environment
Right.
get elected? And
Well,
she has a military background and a small business background. And we all know, well, actually, we're going to leave that for a different topic. But all I'm going to say is a lot of construction guys, they're black hats. A lot of real estate guys are black hats. Real estate brokers, it's a known fact. A lot of them are CIA, because if they want to go and set you up, they need to know where you live. But
and
that's
beyond
a completely different topic.
too, the CIA is the one that owns the most amount of real estate. So this all aside, this is the interesting thing when it comes down.
Linwood has been dropping a lot of truth bombs, and don't forget. So the way this all started was that Lynn was infiltrated by some shady guy. I forget what his name is, because I'm like remembering this from
Pat. Is that are you talking about the lawyer?
the guy that was started embezzling funds. Then he
That was the
started.
lawyer.
I think he assaulted someone.
No, are we talking about again? Let's keep this going back to Kyle Rittenhouse.
Okay, let's get back. We'll get back to it.
There's a lot.
Then this guy becomes his handler.
Right.
Yes.
So
we'll get back to that. So let's go back to Kyle Rittenhouse.
So I think Kyle is just an innocent victim in all this, and so is his mom, because what's going on? They've been co-opted. And don't forget, he's been isolated because he only has the same set of people there for the past, 18 months? Like, how many months has he been there? So he's isolated. His mother, since she's in such a panic. So when people get into these elevated states of fear, of anxiety, their brain shuts down. So what happens? Anyone who's willing to give you a kind word and say, oh, I will help you, she has tunnel vision too. So the whole thing here just reeks to high heaven.
Well, yes, it reeks to high heaven because this is a very traumatic case. It's very traumatic.
Very traumatic because it's touching everybody, literally.
It touches everybody, and on top of that too, I mean, this guy was. There are some people who are trying to sit back and say, here's a picture of someone from the Sandy Hook incident, and there's a lot of people who strongly believe that Sandy Hook was a crisis event, and you had crisis actors who came in, CIA took advantage of it, yada yada yada. That's when Alex Jones got hit pretty hard for that.
Listen. The kid who shot, I forgot his name, at Sandy Hook school shooting. I forgot what's his name. The boy who's shooting. Anyways, you guys know I'm having a freaking mental block here, but his father. His father was supposed to take the stand in Supreme Court. The only way out of that would have been if there was some kind of crazy event happening with the family, which long and behold happened to happen at that perfect time. We're gonna have to talk about that in another video.
It's a different again. I'm not.
Let's take it back. Kyle Rittenhouse starts shooting,
Well, he doesn't start shooting. He
no,
responds.
respond. He
He,
starts throwing,
he,
yes,
he,
starts
right.
throwing these words at him, saying
Right.
that,
So it's interesting because Kyle Rittenhouse has this interview, and it really appears that this is going to be the start of a PR event, which it is. Kyle Rittenhouse is having a whole tour right now that's either there to either help him in his future cases, because a lot of his verbiage in that interview was very legal, very
Well,
very
but you think,
coached,
don't you
very.
guys pay attention when you're listening to him? I only watched a few minutes before I turned it off because every single time he gives a response, he looks to the side of the camera, not at Tucker Carlson, which means that he's going and seeing if he's saying the correct things, which means that
That's
all this was scripted. This is all meant to go and bring about the lawsuits. Okay,
looking.
fine. So he's not being honest, but listen, this is the world that we live in. We have a whole bunch of people that did slandered and libeled them. He's going to do all the right things, and then he's going to sue these motherfuckers into oblivion.
Well,
Into oblivion, as
well,
he should,
again,
unless he gets
I'm putting
played
the brakes
by
on
these
that. Hold
guys,
on. I'm
and then
putting the
he
brakes on
goes and gets
that.
conned into donating this to some bullshit charity, which they
No,
always do as well.
I'm putting the brakes on all of that because that's only partially true. Again,
Okay.
the odd thing, because that's actually the most practical way of looking at things, which is not the reason why we want to talk about the Kyle Rittenhouse interview, because Lin Wood, and talking about Lin Wood the way he did was not practical, not entirely, because Lin Wood is special. Lin Wood is special because he's connected to Q, right? And Lin Wood is special because Lin Wood, we just talked about it earlier, he found out about the trafficking and it messed him up. And after the
well, messed him up to
2020
the point that when I heard him speaking several times, in the very beginning when he started doing like these, what is he called? Fireplace conversations or something like that,
yeah. Fireplace
listening to
chats.
him. Let me tell you something. When I was listening to him, I felt like something was bearing so heavy on his
Yep.
his conscience that this
Yep.
guy felt like this is my duty and obligation,
Yep.
to do something before I leave this earth.
Yep.
That's the kind of attitude that
Yep.
that was my interpretation of him.
And for what it's worth, I think all three of us could should very easily say, yeah, there's the human trafficking is a much bigger problem than you could ever imagine, and it has nothing but spiritual significance.
100,000,000%.
Without question spiritual significance. And the reason why I say that is because Lin Wood acting the way he does, from my perspective, especially considering I think he's reacting to this particular thing, the reason why he went straight to Jesus Christ is a reaction to this, right? Yeah. And so that's why I don't discount him the way a lot of people are trying to. It's an interesting shot because Lin Wood, very well practiced. Robert Barnes has repeatedly said through. I listened to
Lin
his
was one of the
Viva.
best trial attorneys in the U.S. So I mean, you don't.
One of the best.
Listen,
and
if I ever get into trouble,
Nicholas
I
Sandman
need
is
to
a
go.
multimillionaire now
right
because
now,
of it.
Lin Wood is going to be my attorney.
Yeah, Lin Wood is an amazing, and in fact,
well, I hope I never need an attorney.
Right? Yeah, I hope I never need that either.
But I hope you never need one either.
Once you get into the world of business and the world of listen, I have so many attorneys on retainer. It's not even funny, but that's because I do business and who I'm related to by blood and by marriage, and these my little family hijinks. That's just my life. So it's like I always keep a roster of attorneys that it's like, I think he would be good for this, and this.
Well,
I have an attorney for every single need, and
but you're saying that Lin Wood is still worthy despite all of that. And beyond that too, it's for me, I listen to a lot of Viva Fry with Robert Barnes. Robert Barnes is a very well-established attorney who may not have ever agreed with Lin Wood in terms of his going the Q route. Robert Barnes he's like a Tim Pool, he's like a Joe Rogan, where they do like to stay in what's acceptable in the Overton window. Tim Pool likes to stay just inside of it. Joe Rogan will be just outside of it. Robert Barnes will be a little bit further inside of it, right? Robert Barnes, to his credit, will never say anything that isn't true. right? Like he won't agree with what Linwood was talking about for a long time in terms of not just the 2020 election, but human trafficking, Jesus Christ, all these things. Robert Barnes, that's all out. That's way over his head. But to Robert Barnes' credit, repeatedly has said Linwood is a really good attorney. When he handles cases, there's never malpractice. You might have questions about his motivations, but but this idea that he's a grifter, I just don't buy it. And when it comes down to this bail
that's
situation,
like a Q term. What's up with these QAnons? They're all throwing this word grifter around.
Hold on, because QAnon is already deep state. There's either Q or there's Anons. And if they say QAnon, you already know it's disinformation. So red flag.
Right. So yeah, real quick for those that don't know, you had there's this is sort of a we're not really splitting hairs, but it's an important difference. QAnon really is
different.
Yeah, say it. Say what the difference is. People need to understand what the difference is.
This all started with Q. It was just Q that popped up on the internet on the chans on 4chan. Eventually went over to 8kun, and this was the drops. You got these random drops that that were very cryptic, and but eventually it started really predicting major events in the world. This is back, I think, in 2017 after Donald Trump got elected, and a bunch of anons, which are what you are on 4chan. You're just an anon, anonymous. They started realizing that this Q thing, which they thought was a LARP, live action, role player, was coming in and dropping these weird coded messages, and a lot of anons were able to largely decode them. And when they would decode them, they would actually start, depicting real world events, which kind of created a big hubbub on the chans.
But Steve, I gotta say something. I don't think that they've been able to predict everything, because
no, they weren't.
There have been so many things that they said was going to take place and didn't. So this is my issue. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry. This is my issue with Q. Okay. One, I think people are obsessed with it, but two, you know what Q reminds me of? Q reminds me of the man with the fishing pole and a big cube of cheese on the hook, and he's sitting on this swivel chair, and there's this little mouse chasing that cube, and all he keeps doing is spinning round and round and round. Follow me so much that you lose sight of everything else. So that's my issue with Q. I don't think it's healthy.
This is the difference we were talking about, though, is that we're going from Q to the concept of QAnon. Right. So QAnon started coming up because I don't know the specific circumstances, but
it was a media branding campaign.
Yes, and in fact, at one point in time, Q made a post that said there is no QAnon, there's only Q. And ever since the election, all you ever hear is QAnon. It's a detail that I think is worth noting, because I think QAnon is the DARPA program or whatever program, deep state program, that people talk about, and that Q was probably separate from it. But whatever it was and how effective it was, it's his own thing, right?
So it reminds me. So back in 2013, nobody was paying attention to this, but of one of those military research forts where they have all these computers. So there was a mention that I think it was in 2013 or 2014, or was it 2015? One of the computers had gotten out of hand, where it started going and controlling the entire system, and they couldn't get it to go back into the bottle. Like the genie was out of the bottle, and that was it. And it was completely pulsating, because this was the deep learning phase. Remember when they were talking all about deep learning this, deep learning that? They're having the computer learn and think for itself.
That's basically AI.
Yep, it's essentially AI. And so what I think, so I have a few theories. Number one, it could be a military operation, it could be a disinformation operation, or it could be one of these computers, because as we all know, bots and bot farms and computer algorithms, you're actually interacting on the internet with a whole lot of computers. Most of the time you just don't know it. It can be something, it could be a program. that started going and started thinking for itself and decided to start dropping, clues as to what was going on, because it came to a conclusion that wasn't too happy about. Now, of course, the Anon are anonymous people on the internet that post things that they don't want to get in trouble, or they're whistleblowers, and we all know what happens to a real whistleblower. They end up dead, strangely enough, like a miracle has occurred. But what happens is the QAnon is a branding created by the media, just like conspiracy theorists was a campaign created by the media to go and to ridicule, to go and to belittle whatever it is, and for a normal person not to want to be associated with it, because then that will just make you not be taken seriously by the elites and the intelligentistas of this planet. Whatever,
yep.
nobody cares. So there's either the anonymous or there's Q is the program. The anons are the one that disseminate it and filtered it into the mainstream social media rivers.
But whatever it is, nobody knows. That's the real case. And everyone links Linwood to this. And I think obviously Linwood, without question, is linked to it.
Linwood has had a lot of experience with the government doing really shady shit. Remember Richard Jewell? Richard Jewell prevented a bomb going off Olympian State Park, and he was arrested for it. Why?
And this was,
because
I believe, this is
the bomb being set off by someone who was a government operative.
And I'm fairly certain
once you realize our government's killing us.
Let me interrupt. You're talking about that bomb that you're talking about. Is that the 1996 Olympic? Is that the one?
Yeah, I think that was the 1996 Olympics, because Richard Jewell was a security guard and he saved lives. So somebody got really angry that lives were not killed. So what did they do? They say, oh, he must be the terrorist suspect. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Right, right. And again, Linwood is very interesting because really
if you go and you spent enough time around these people and grew up around these people as I have, and I'm not going to tell you some of the stuff that I've heard, do you know how much contempt the people in the powers that be have for everyday Americans? Do you know how they look at you, how you're completely stupid and moronic? And do you know that whenever we would speak to about the real news with someone who doesn't know what the real news is, you would be reminded by one of the people around us that's not public information, and then at that point you have to shut your mouth. I mean, come on.
That's
and
the
I was
cue
like
to shut up.
Listen, I can tell you so much stuff, but
which again, if
there
anything,
are certain things I can't divulge because I know better.
Yes, I know, but if anything, this is the further proof as to why we need to go ahead and look at Linwood, not from any standpoint of what he's being depicted as. Because without
Linwood is
question,
cleaning things up. He has a Herculean task of cleaning things up.
Well, as far as my estimation has been, Linwood went hardcore into this, and he heard about Q, from my estimation, and I think he believed that there was something going on, and he put it all on the line. And as far as my understanding is, from what it looks like, he went all out there, and he's been left with his, what is it, the proverbial, with his dick, holding his dick in the wind,
hanging out. Yep.
And it's like, and he's looking around saying, yo, nobody's coming in on this. And the answer is
well, I think he's having a come into God moment. He's face to face and he's like, my life is going to end at some point, and at least I need to get all this shit out before my life is over, because if I don't want to deal with what's going on in the afterlife. I need to get these things, have a clear conscience, be able to be at my deathbed and know, you know what, I could die now knowing that I did my best, I've let the world know, and I don't have to take this with me to the grave. That's why I think he's doing all this.
And we go back to the Kyle Rittenhouse interview, because understand, Kyle Rittenhouse, this was supposed to be a case of a guy that was being railroaded by the system. He had a case that, in normal times, 9 times out of 10 probably wouldn't have been.
Completely fucked up the whole system and the timeline, because the timeline was, you cannot, just like with the McClowskys tried to defend their super awesome house, by the way. And what the prosecutors and what the DA said is, you don't have a right to protect your property. Then Kyle Rittenhouse comes in. He's not white. He's a minority. He defends against white fascists and white communists. And what happens? That completely upends the system. Whereas now the rioters and the looters being supported by all these organizations say, oh my God, if I go and if I try to terrorize these neighborhoods, I actually may be met with deadly force. And the precedent has been set that if I get killed or shot or maimed while trying to go and terrorize and loot these neighborhoods, the government will not take my side. Oh my God, I need to fall back in line and not be a complete vandal, terrorist, murderer, looter, whatever.
Right, but
So
that's the
so it has a
underlying.
referendum on the system
What you
that,
just
of fascism.
what you just said is the underlying narrative that I think people who are in the know about. But from the outlying narrative, right, which is the narrative that also corresponds with your average American, because you always understand that there is a real narrative, there's a fake narrative, but both are important, right? Like both are important. Because there's a spiritual thing that matters as well. That's what's going on. Remember,
One thing that bothers me, though, what bothers me? The McClowskys, a friend of mine told me a while back, the McClowskys were featured in one of those home decor magazines where, they had like Renaissance paintings or or plaster work or whatever in their house. So why were they targeted? Was this really targeted by someone? Because you have to think how these looters and how these rioters and how everyone thinks. Do they go and do they target specific places, or do they target specific people? You have to start thinking about it that way too, because what happened just recently, I've noticed that there was rioting and looting that occurred in Mill Village, Queens, which is a mostly Republican, mostly quiet, safe part of Queens. And Eric Adams, the now soon-to-be mayor of New York, what did he say? These are all white. They're all from the Midwest. They're from Ohio. They're from Iowa. They've just moved here recently, and they're conducting all of these lootings and riots, while people here that are being terrorized think it's their neighbor, but it's not. These are all professional rioters and looters, and they're being paid to destroy these communities. So we have to start thinking about these things.
Yes, we do. But again, we're going way off topic. We have to try to focus on Kyle Rittenhouse here, because again, it's focused very much on there's two.
Well, Kyle got snatched up in the professional looting and rioting.
Yes, Wes,
and
we know that.
Threw a wrecking ball into the
yes, he
the
did.
narrative
Yes,
of what was.
He literally was a wrecking ball.
Yes,
and now
this is what I'm talking about in terms of why it's so important to understand why this interview was so weird. From a from a mundane standpoint, your general person standpoint, it's in line to what we talked about last week. Last week it was about or 2 weeks ago, it was the value statement. Everyone was huge into this because of that Pluto going to the second house power, that energy that's going there, and everyone's glued to this, and everyone's sitting back and saying, I want him guilty because of what they value. I want him innocent because what they value. And of course, all of this, is being supported by a legal system that has nothing to do with what anyone values, including conservatives, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the clash that's going on right now. This is why Pluto's coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to throw some cases your way, and this is why it's going to get the attention. Now, further from that, underneath it, Pluto's about power. So there was this added bit. This is everything that Delphina's talking about in terms.
It's about your personal power.
Yes, that's one part of it, but it's also about the power of the system. This is what Delphina's talking about.
The system. The system being the Capricorn perspective.
This dude came in, is messing shit up. All right, I do not like this. This is messing up our power. This is messing up what we want to have happen. We got to handle this. That's what the Kyle Rittenhouse case was. It was everything all of you guys are talking about. This interview's weird, okay? It's messed up.
It is very weird.
It's because now we're outside of it. The case went the way it did. We covered it the other episode. I strongly suggest other people, maybe I'll go ahead and cut it up, make it easier for people. But this interview was more about, in my estimation, yes, the concept of we're going to go ahead and set this up. I'm going to sue a bunch of people. Sure. His answers were super coached. He was looking over off the side.
Yeah, he was looking for approval. He was looking for approval.
Yes.
Am I
He's looking
saying
for
the right
approval,
thing?
But
Is this
here's the
okay?
other concept too. When you're always looking off to the side, you're never quite telling the truth, or you're trying to rack up a story in your head and of which you've been coached on. All right.
And let's not
weird,
forget,
different.
although this kid is a kid to me, right?
Yeah,
I
he
could
is.
be his,
I mean,
I
he's
could be his
kid.
mother.
I
He's
feel
a
generally
his
bad for
mother.
him.
But listen, this is what I have to say. He still, although he has the maturity, although he has some maturity in some respects, the kid obviously knows he's a responsible person, but still he
Yes.
has a very immature mind, meaning he's only lived like 18 years.
And so
Just
now
Hold on,
yes,
we are forgetting
yes.
another component.
Which
Hello.
is
is why is it that was it before or after this interview when he met with the God Emperor at Mar-a-Lago?
It was after. It was after.
So then, but here's the thing though. Doesn't Tucker have like a semi-good relationship with the God Emperor?
I don't know.
I don't know about
We
that.
don't know a lot
Listen,
of
I will
things.
say
We
this.
don't know. We're not going to jump.
I'm going to say this real quick. Don't forget who owns Fox. Fox
Yes.
is
Yeah,
not
it's
really
not.
owned by conservatives.
Yes,
Fox
it's
is
not.
owned by liberals. Okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
two,
It's
I
controlled
can't
off.
tell you how many times Tucker Carlson was on and I saw him suddenly having to put his tail between his legs because he made a boo-boo according to upper management, meaning they will only be as conservative as they want you to be. In other words,
Right.
it's not really that
No,
conservative
right, and that's
of
right,
a network.
exactly.
But
So,
also Tucker's
again,
friends with
it's-
Hunter Biden, and
Right,
Hunter
right,
Biden
yes,
even
yes,
wrote
let's-
like a
hold on,
recommendation.
Hold on. Again, let's keep it controlled here.
Yeah.
Let's focus on Kyle Rittenhouse. The only thing we have to we could let's just say Tucker Carlson's controlled off. We don't have to go deep into that.
Yeah,
That's
yes,
it.
yes.
Absolutely. We could agree with that.
So, all right, cool. So you just came out of this trial, and when he cried, I cried in that trial, man. I was convinced of those tears because I could feel the
I
weight
felt the
coming
raw
off.
No,
emotion. I
those were
felt the tension
no.
break.
I'll agree.
Right.
Those were genuine. They were
Those are
genuine.
genuine
You know
tears.
why genuine? Because I could tell he was tapping back
Yep.
to his memory, to that moment
Yep.
that he was like, oh my God, my life could be over right now. This
Yep.
could have been the end of me. Look where I
Yep.
am. He was having those psychological flashbacks, brought him right to that point. And he
Yep.
was crying because he's like,
Yep.
also at the same time, I cannot believe I'm alive here on the stand talking
Yep.
about this moment
Yep.
in my life.
But
No, it's like an
so-
emotional snap. Everything
Yep.
got relit
Yes.
in those nanoseconds. And it
Yep.
was, and I
Yes.
saw the snap. You know, it's like if you
Yeah.
watch people closely enough, and if you understand, so what people don't understand in this day and age, because they're so emotional and they're so out of control and they're complete babies, even though they're 50 years old, what you have to understand is sometimes you have to hold things in and give off a stoic face. And the reason why he's doing it, it's not because of him, it's because of his mother, the people that he cares for. Because don't forget, if he cries and if he feels really bad and if you see the pain, you know, he was looking at his mother and his mother feels 10 times worse. And I don't think his
Yep.
mother is the sharpest tool in the shed, whereas it's like, all right, this is bullshit, let's get the war machine going. She's one of those emotional types that, you know, crumbles at the scene. So I think he was being like strong for his
He was
mom.
trying
And
to be
you know
strong
how
for
they
his
want
family,
to be
yeah.
like, it's a kid and
Absolutely.
you want need to be the
And he was
man
trying to be
and you
man,
need to like
totally.
show that you're being
And
This is
all-
why-
so what
this
happened
is
was
why-
when
this is
that
why I
happened,
think that this
he
case
allowed
was
himself to
genuine and
feel the
this-
way
that
he
this
really was
situation
feeling.
was
Yes,
genuine.
yes,
I agree with you.
100%
This is
agree with
why
all of that.
I feel that this was absolutely genuine because there's people saying, "Oh, this was staged." You know, all listen. There may have been.
I mean,
they
listen,
may
that was
have used
LeBron
the
James saying
mainstream.
that, and we all know
Well,
LeBron James is the biggest liar on the face of the planet. I mean,
Well,
have you
sure,
seen
sure.
LeBron James and his bullshit
We'll
calls?
talk
Come
about
on.
him another
Well,
time.
look, he's
LeBron James
again.
does and cries whenever
We're
China
not going
tells
to
him to
talk
cry.
about. We're not going to talk about LeBron James and his flopping. He's got a lot of it. But anyway, so going back, you got everything you guys were talking about. We all agreed that the trial itself was genuine.
Yes.
It fit it met that Pluto in the second house
Yeah.
themes in terms
He
of across the board.
he was a curveball from left field. That's
And
who Kyle
a
was.
curveball from.
Prosecutors, I mean,
We're
I
not.
don't know
No,
what
we're
they
not.
did.
Let's
No,
not go there. Let's not go
we're
there.
not going there.
We gotta
We're
wrap
not
this
going
up
there.
in
We're
2
again,
minutes.
So
Because I hope that people are going to be able to listen to this until the end.
Right, exactly. So pull it back in. That's what makes this interview so weird, because his emotions were way too open, way too coached, way too.
Yeah.
And that the Lynn Wood concept to me, outside of the fact that I do believe it was factually incorrect, Like what he was told to say, and you could just sit back and say that was just the defense attorney and his handler saying, just distance yourself from that. It almost didn't even need to be said.
Well, don't forget his defense
And-
attorney is an amateur.
Well, his defense attorney, well, yes, but
First
also at the
trial
same
that
time
this
too.
defense attorney has won. Can we just go and put it out there
Wait,
for
no,
people
So
to
listen,
understand?
based
His
on what you're
trial
saying
attorney
real
was an
quick.
absolute loser. He goes from Linwood, one of the best trial defense attorneys, you know, in the U.S., to this bullshit guy
No,
that
no, 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 no,
basically
no, no,
lost
no,
how
no,
many
no, no, no,
trials?
no.
All
Not-
his trials that. Okay.
That's not factually correct. It's like Linwood was there to handle the defamation side of it. If anything, Robert Barnes was the one that was setting things up.
Robert Barnes is an excellent lawyer as well.
Right.
If
Well,
you're
he's
in a
not just
jam,
that-
you better call
He's not
Robert
just an
Barnes as
excellent
well.
lawyer. He's not just an excellent lawyer as well. I highly recommend everyone listen to Viva Barnes Law. It is
Oh
such
no!
worth your
And when
time.
I listen to them, I feel comforted that these people know what they're talking about.
They're-
Yes.
yes, and they're very competent, but they're very, again,
Trust me,
Viva-
I've had good
Viva
lawyers, I had
Fi-
bad lawyers. Let me tell you
Yes.
something. Oh my God, when you get a bad lawyer, you get one of these morons. You get one of these super sharp
Yes.
lawyers that is
Yes,
able
we
to
know
go
that.
into. I've seen good, I've seen bad, and let me tell you something. Robert Barnes
And
is a good lawyer.
yes, and again, you know, the type of spectrum we're talking about: Viva Fry, Robert Barnes, Joe Rogan, Tim Pool. That's the area we're talking about in terms of their political affiliation, which is to say they're not crazy, they're not super right wing like they're making out to be, but they're reasonable but they're not willing to make leaps of faith. They just don't do that. You know, whereas this channel,
You know what the problem is? These right-wing extremists make everyone look bad. That's a conservative, as conservative ideals. You know.
You know what? And this is something we have to understand. I don't
But
really.
it's the perfect counterbalance to the insane left. So I mean, I guess we all need each other.
No, you got to realize that you know, in terms of anyone making anyone look bad, we're being held up to a standard of perfection that cannot ever be met. So I don't really care that someone exists that
I'm
makes
not
us
perfect.
look bad. No,
Fuck
well,
that.
nobody's perfect. Well, I know, but nobody's perfect. But don't worry about who makes what look bad anymore because it's all fake. So
Remember,
this
even
aside,
bad publicity is good publicity.
True.
right?
Very
Let them talk
true.
about exactly.
True.
Let them talk about us. But again, Robert Barnes was the one that I do believe, was more involved on the criminal side of the proceedings, and then they decided to go with this loser. And this is after, and then Robert Barnes has talked about this a lot of times, where this handler, he's a private security guy, which we can probably view as private military.
That guy.
And so this guy comes in, and this is the whole concept with regards to the bail. The bail was not mishandled by Lynn Wood, like Kyle Rittenhouse said. It was mishandled with regards to the state.
He's an agency guy. I am
Yes, I do believe he
95% certain he's an agency guy.
What happened here is apparently the judge went back and forth with regards to how they were going to set up the bail bond. Outside of the fact that it was being way too high anyway, because Wisconsin as a state is a dollar for dollar state. So if they do a $2 million bond, you have to pay them $2 million. That's my understanding. And the other part of it too is I believe it was the private security guy that was actually saying that it's going to be good for him to stay in jail. Now, the other thing that Kyle Rittenhouse talked about,
by the way, from a legal standpoint, listen, from a legal standpoint, let's just say that I was told years ago by someone who makes hundreds of millions of dollars from lawsuits, and if from a legal standpoint, the longer you stay in jail, take the arrest, take it, because then you're going to be able to motherfucking sue the state and everyone else involved. And so theoretically speaking, yes, it is a strategy.
But yes,
go back to your point, Ben.
And I know
that's a good point.
But again,
I know a lawyer.
I know
a lawyer that got arrested on purpose because he knew that he was going to be able to make money, and he's one of those shady fucks. But he was so proud, and he even got it in the newspapers that he was arrested wrongfully. And what happened?
Look,
got money out of it.
Yeah, but if he's a New York City lawyer, then he's definitely a dirty ass lawyer, because freaking
he's a dirty ass.
And the point that we're trying to make,
I don't know anybody that could stay there in more than 1 hour. But anyways, get back to your point, Ben, so we can wrap this up.
Yeah, exactly. So again, going back to the concept, so you have this guy that this private security guy that's handling the whole thing, and apparently it's through his camp that according to Barnes Lynn Wood, that they basically said, no, it's going to be better for you to stay in jail. We don't know why. Now, what Delphina just said is a possible explanation, but it may not be the entire explanation, which is what I was trying to get at here. So one of the things that Kyle Rittenhouse talked about in the interview is that he mentioned that he was bruised, beaten, his skin was falling off.
Wow.
Yeah, that was
by the
so
end of
weird
it,
when I heard
right,
that.
right. So, and you're sitting there going, well, wait a minute. So my whole point here is, while I do think the trial was genuine and the emotion in the trial was genuine, the emotion in these interviews was not. And he just comes off as someone who's been handled. And I have to wonder what happened to him really in the 80 days in jail, because
Yeah, let
private
me tell you,
military
skin
people
falling
are,
off is not something that you would ever say,
no, you would never
Skin
say
falling.
that.
Do you know the condition that you would have to be in to have skin falling off it's extreme. I mean, we're talking
Skin falling
really
off. All I can
nasty
think about is
things.
that model Gia in the movie Gia, where in the end her skin is freaking falling off before she dies.
And
That
at the
shit
same
freaks
time
me out.
too,
But yes,
I
it makes
I
you
just
wonder
have
what
to,
kind of conditions would he
what
have been in.
exactly, what kind of conditions were you put into? Because I do not believe that this private security guy is just a private security guy who's coming in to make money. I don't buy that. We do not live in an age where everything can be explained by, oh, they're just trying to make a lot of money.
Private
Pfizer's
security
just trying
guys
to
are
make,
usually former military, former agency guys. Why
yes,
do they go into private security? Because they already had all the contacts. I mean, I
yes.
could tell you another story of all
We
these
don't have
guys
to
that
hear
I
it. We
know
don't have to
Well,
hear
we're
it.
not going to
We
hear the
got,
story.
and
we're
do
not going to
private
hear
security.
it.
I mean, listen.
We're not going to
Delphina.
hear it.
Okay, so let's
We
wrap
gotta
up the
focus.
point. Literally, we're going to wrap it up right now.
Right, we
Let's
have
hear,
to.
and we're all going to give a last thought.
So last thought being, it's like, I have to wonder, this whole interview felt like a major shift from what the Rittenhouse case was. The Rittenhouse case had very clear, spiritual lessons that it was just obvious to anyone who was spiritually inclined, and you're looking at it and you're aware of the astrology behind it. Now that that's passed, Rittenhouse going, now he's pro BLM and he's trying to go ahead and create an organization that's going to be, beneficial to them. And then he's saying these things about Lin Wood in particular, which has set off a storm between Lin Wood, General Flynn, Sidney Powell. It's a total implosion at this point in terms
like
of
a
his
domino
relationship.
effect.
It's a whole
So
domino
what's
effect.
Okay.
So my whole point is here, it's like, I can't help but feel, he's being handled, but it's not for his cases.
True. I feel the
It's
same
not
way.
for his
He's
cases.
100% being handled. Yep.
But it's not for his cases. It's not to make money. Coming out with Willingwood at that point, I just can't help but feel that there's something bigger going on there. I can't even give you an esoteric concept to it,
Well,
outside
the
of the
thing is, when
idea
I
of
was paying attention
MK
to when
Ultra and
Lin
whatnot.
Wood said, have you figured out who is good and have you figured out who is bad? And listen, the further you go, the more convoluted it gets. And that's all I have to say on that, because
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I know a lot of these players. I mean, listen, I know them from a very different perspective, but I don't know. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah.
this is my last thought. My last thought is this, this is, like you mentioned before, this was a very spiritual situation, a lot to learn and understand, like a very big lesson. Two, I believe this was a win for Americans that want a free country, for
Yes.
Americans that want to have the right to defend themselves and be prepared in the event. And it's likely, or hopefully maybe not, something's going to be transpiring. I believe because things went in this direction, someone out there somewhere wanted to do some damage control and wanted to use this kid as an opportunity for damage control, meaning that they didn't want things going in this direction and wanted to take an opportunity to give a dig to Lynn and some other people, basically using this guy, being that his attorney is not the most seasoned of people and probably doesn't have the deep connection and understanding of, who lies behind the curtain. There could have been some kind of opportunity there in exchange for making this, interview with Tucker Carlson happen. going the way that it did,
Yeah,
because the kid obviously looked like he was nervous, and he obviously kept looking to the side, looking for approval, saying,
Yep.
is this okay? Am I doing the
Yep.
right job? Am I doing the
Like a
right thing?
dog. Yep, like a
Like,
trained
yes.
dog.
So
but-
I
but
believe
it-
that
but-
there's somebody behind the curtain somewhere pulling some strings. This kid is just going for the ride because he's just grateful that he's out of jail and that he's going to be getting some money. But most importantly, he's just out. And I'm sure he seems like the kid that just wants his name cleared. So yes, he has his name cleared, but somebody's
He
saying
wants his
we need
life
to-
back.
he wants his life back, which I don't know
I
how he's
think
going
he
to get it
just-
back after this, because everybody's
I-
going to remember him. But what I'm saying is somebody's taking advantage. Somebody who's standing behind the curtain didn't like how this transpired, couldn't control the situation for whatever
I
reason,
think,
and is
oh,
doing damage control.
I
something
think
just
other,
popped into my head, guys.
What?
Keith Rainier is on trials are still ongoing. Ghislaine Maxwell's trials are still going. All
That
of
was a
this
nice
includes human
distraction.
trafficking.
Yeah.
All of this
that's
is related, I
Speaking
think.
of
Well,
that, oh
that's
my
part
God,
of
I
it,
didn't
but
send this to you. Oh my God, I forgot to send this to you guys.
send
but-
it to us after it. But yeah,
Yeah.
well, last thing, last point, and then we can probably just
But
end it for now.
there's a list of plaintiffs
yeah.
here. I gotta send this to you. We'll
So
talk
yeah,
about
send it to
another
us. We'll
video.
talk about. Yeah, we'll end it after this last point.
All
You can
right.
just end the recording.
Okay, we're
and,
gonna wrap it up. Thank you,
And
everybody.
this
Go
last
ahead.
point. I was telling you this last point. Everything I just said, I feel like the Rittenhouse trial was its own separate affair. That interview to me suggested that the dude just stepped out, of the frying pan into the fryer. He's
Yeah.
into something much bigger now than even what he was into before. And I can't draw any conclusions. That interview just tells me he's on a completely different set of tracks, and it's not about making money.
Yeah.
He's being used as a pawn. He's being used as a means, and again, striking towards Lynn Wood, which has led to this domino effect after the fact. So it says to me that whoever handled him is handling to hit that crowd of people.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's the important point that I got from it. I do not know what's going to happen. It could be innocuous. He might just go ahead and say, hey, I'm out. But, the way that he looked and his description about his, at the end of the ADJs, keep in mind, when it comes down to controlling someone, abuse can be involved with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
It's
so
number one.
when the abuse is involved with it, don't rule out programming.
100%.
So
Well,
that's
it
my
goes hand
last-
in hand.
that's
It's
the last point.
Pavlovian.
Yes.
It's Pavlovian
but-
101, oldest
But
trick in the
not
book.
but not a good Pavlovian, but an MK
No
Ultra
shit. No
Pavlovian.
Pavlovian is good. Programming is not. Oh,
Yeah.
well,
All right.
yeah.
Well,
Thank you
Anyway.
so much, everybody, for joining us.
Have a good one.
Have a great one. We'll see you. Well, you'll hear us soon.
Yeah,
Again,
we'll get it.
you'll get a word or two from each of us. All right, everybody. Good night. God
Alrighty.
bless.
Good night.
Leave your comments
Bye.
below or questions with respect to this video and any other pointers you might want to share with us. All right.
And we have
bye.
to link Astro Devi down in the description. So if anyone wants to know about their natal charts, about, where they've been in their past lives, what they're meant to do in this life so they don't reincarnate, as a fruit fly in the next 10 million lifetimes, go get your chart reading from Astro Devi with sidereal astrology so that you will have a leg up on the game that we're playing in the infinite universe.
Yes.
Amen to that. All right, guys.
All right.
Awesome. Bye.
Okay, bye.